Welcome to part 2 of the Smile Tapes. We will begin with a brief recap for those of you who are new, but I highly suggest watching my part 1 video to get all of the details. I will link that video in the top right as well as the description below. Around 1994, a mysterious fungus abruptly appeared in society. What we know about the fungus is it causes the host to gradually become maniacal, violent, and unable to control their laughter. It progresses through various stages, stage 2 being the one that most people are not alive at. The fungus takes over the host's brain and can transmit the illness through their mouth as spores. One victim, named Sean Gomez, contracted this illness and slowly spiraled down into insanity before committing a mass homicide which resulted in 17 casualties, as well as 10 injuries. We find ourselves in Chitinilu, California, where we discover some mysterious signals that can only be found at night. The signals are very unclear at first, but as the night goes on, we begin to get audio that is much easier to discern. The messages consist of a string of numbers which seem to be a set of coordinates possibly. Maybe they lead to points of origin where the fungus originated from. We don't really know yet. If you recall, in part 1 we learned that one of the theories on where life originated from was called panspermia, which suggested that life came from other planets in the form of asteroids, or other debris that broke off from planets due to collisions. And I want to give a quick shout out to Matthew here, who commented on part 1. Matthew explained that the distorted KPG text in the Far History video references an extinction event that ended all of the non-avian dinosaurs. This event was so powerful that it actually eliminated 3/4 of all plant and animal species on Earth, and it is speculated that most of the destruction from this event was from the actual asteroid impact. In the real world, there is a mark called the KPG boundary, which can be found around the world in various marine and land rocks, and if you take a closer look at the belt mark left behind inside the rocks, you can find traces of unusually high amounts of metal iridium, which is supposedly more common in the asteroids compared to Earth. I won't spoil any more here, but this was a very cool revelation, so shout out to you, Matthew. Perhaps in the Smile Tapes universe, the asteroid's impact itself wasn't what caused the dinosaurs' extinction. Maybe the asteroid in this universe contained the fungus instead of the iridium, which spread amongst the animals roaming Earth at the time. As of October 1995, we learned that there are nearly 1,500 casualties due to the fungus, as well as over 5,000 hospitalizations.
Fellow Americans, for the past few months, our citizens have been under attack by a new and deadly force, a fungus that affects the minds of our citizens and causes them to kill other people. Our scientists and police forces have been making efforts to contain and treat the infected, but it's only had a minimal effect. I have also declared an emergency in San Diego City, so I now advise every citizen to stay inside. If we don't act now, this may escalate into a countrywide epidemic. We may possibly deal with hundreds of thousands of deaths. I wouldn't want that on my citizens. I hope we are able to get through this. Thank you.
President Bill Clinton informs us that the smile drug is on the brink of becoming a countrywide epidemic and urges citizens to stay indoors. After his speech, the footage glitches out and we see some text asking, "Where do their souls go?" before being met by an emergency alert system commanding the citizens of America to stay inside. Again, we see some text, this time it's spelled backwards, but it does say, "They are stronger than you think," referencing the smilers. The illness has now escalated to the point where people must wear protective equipment including gas masks to avoid breathing in any spores. Furthermore, people are informed that they should begin managing their resources as to limit the amount of time they need to spend outside to gather supplies, because now the peaceful lives that we once led are no more. Welcome to Pandemonium. There are two variants of the infection that we should be aware of. Variant A consists of 5 stages and causes physical and mental deterioration, and is the most common. As of now, we have no cure, and I don't know if we ever will. Anyways, there is also variant B, where we have discovered that the drug has no effect on either the mental or physical conditions of the host. This variant is much more rare than variant A. They are able to retain their sanity as well as function normally. However, we did discover that even though there are no visible changes, they still pose a threat. The drug still lies dormant inside variant B and is capable of being transmitted. So we highly advise being cautious around anyone who you suspect to be of this variant. And if you yourself believe to be infected, please either quarantine yourself or put on protective faceware as to not spread the spores. We are currently observing and testing Sarah Campbell after having her quarantined. We suspect that she is the very first person to have ever contracted this variant. Moving on, we have variant C, who So now we have learned that there are 2 additional variants along with A out there in the world. There is B, which is a more docile version where the host remains sane and has no violent urges at all, but it is still capable of spreading the illness. Variant C, however, is a much more wicked version of the traditional crazed smiler that we are familiar with. Not only are they more deranged, but they appear to be much more durable as well. The image that we are presented with seems to depict a host that has had his eye gouged out, with also what looks to be a bullet hole in the side of his head. Additionally, in the comments we can find a pinned post from Patorikku that obviously seems like some sort of code. Upon entering this into a base 64 decoder, we can get a hidden link that takes us to the following image. A black and white picture of what looks to be 2 shacks in a place that looks to be predominantly farmland. Under the image we are greeted by yet another string of code. The comment section of the video deduced that a hex decoder translates the code into the word white roof, which leads us to assume we are supposed to gear our attention towards the roof of the smaller shack. And upon careful inspection we can find a faint QR code, and unfortunately the code was too faint to actually scan, but some people in the comments were able to figure out how to scan it. And the footage I'm about to show you is truly one of the darkest and most disturbing things I've seen in the analog horror genre, so please exercise caution when viewing this following clip. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, this motherfucker rickrolled us. Or at least that's what a lot of people said in the comments. I obviously don't know for sure, but it looks like Patorikku actually rickrolled us. Nice. In the video titled Hike, we journey along with a man who is visiting Chitanilu. Upon reaching the top of his hike, he begins to rest as he takes in the beautiful and calming wilderness, before he is suddenly alerted by a blood-curdling scream from the distance.
Good to see you up here.
The man then decides to venture into the forest in an attempt to investigate the screams from earlier. After calling out a few times, all seems quiet and normal before he stumbles upon some laughter inside a cabin. Unfortunately, this would prove to be the worst mistake the man has ever made.
What's going on there? Anyone in here?
The date is now March 31st, 1996. We have counted 9,786 casualties as well as 4,035 hospitalizations. Scientists have pinpointed the origin of the fungus to a microbe in the Yucatan region. The microbe was said to be found inside an insect which was trapped within some amber that dates back about 65 million years or so. The scientists also clarified that the insect does appear to be native to Earth. However, the microbe looks quote-unquote alien, suggesting that it is not from Earth. We then cut to a short piece of footage showing an asteroid housing the fungus, as well as some other organisms crashing into Earth, which ultimately doomed the dinosaurs. Now this is where that comment from Matthew earlier is very cool, since this is essentially confirming what we theorized at the beginning. But I do want to clarify that in this short bit of footage, it doesn't actually explicitly say whether or not the fungus itself was responsible for ending the dinosaurs, or if it was the actual asteroid impact. Personally, I like to tell myself that it was because of the spores breaking off of the asteroid as it made contact with Earth that doomed the dinosaurs, but again, we don't actually know, and you're obviously free to make your own assumptions. Moving on, the scientists have officially declared a name for the fungus. They have decided to call it Abellio mundo rhizus.
My name is Oliver McCormack. Today is April 3rd, 1996. I am running out of food. I don't know if I can survive any longer. Every day just gets worse. The smoke suffocates me. I've sealed off most of the ventilation in my apartment because I fear that the spores may come through. All I hear is the crackle of the fire just blocks away from here, and the laughter of the infected, and the screams of the unfortunate. I'm getting hungry, and I just finished my last food supply 10 hours ago. I don't have a choice anymore.
Good afternoon, Miss Campbell. Here just to ask you a few questions.
We listen in on a conversation with Sarah Campbell. Scientists are proposing to Sarah that they want to use her antibodies as a way to develop a cure, and of course, Sarah accepts. But tragically, before a cure could actually be developed, a group of Smilers ambushed the laboratory, ultimately slaughtering everyone inside as well as Sarah Campbell.
The laboratory was infiltrated by the Smilers. Despite the high security of the facility, it was not able to withstand the enormous wave of Smilers. Everyone, the personnel and subjects, were killed in the bloody raid. While the
What? No, 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 no.
We also learned that there was an immensely high amount of security present at the laboratory, further displaying just how dangerous these smilers really are. So now we have fast forward in time about 20 years or so since the outbreak. Additionally, we find out that the variant C of the smilers are vulnerable to fire, suggesting that the other variants should be as well. We don't actually learn how the outbreak ended, just that it did. The previous clip showed a man desperately crying out "no, no, no," which could mean that there was some sort of bomb strike from the government or even a nuclear attack on the city to clear out the infected, and that person screaming out was not able to escape.
During that whole outbreak, I stayed in my basement for a whole year. Yeah. I had to get used to living in such a claustrophobic space where I'd risk getting infected or brutally murdered by those psychos. The tricky part was getting food. I'd carefully walk around streets with a gas mask, avoiding the infested areas, and the competition for food was like really, really high. So lots of fights would happen, supermarkets that were abandoned.
And that marks the end of the Smile tapes. Now, this is the official ending to the series as stated by Patorikku himself. Patorikku has stated that the series has reached the point to where it has become mentally taxing, so they have decided to step away from the series indefinitely. Now, they have said that we shouldn't expect a season 2 for a while, so maybe at some point down the line we will get a continuation of the series, but even if we don't, this last volume was a very fitting end in my opinion. So thank you so much to Patorikku for taking the time and fighting through the stress of creating the series, as it was a true underrated gem, and I had an amazing time watching through each video. And thank you guys so much for watching through all of this video. Let me know what you guys thought about the Smile tapes in the comments below, and if you have any other series you would like me to cover, also let me know below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like, as it really does help me out a lot, or even possibly subscribing if you would like to see more future content. If you would like to check out my other videos, feel free to click either of the two videos on your right, as I'm sure you will enjoy them. With that being said, I'll talk to you guys all again very soon.